Hello. Hello. Welcome to the Den of the Grey Waste. I am your host, Grey Waste Tim, and today we are doing the Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath. Joining me is Damon, Little Prince Damon of the Grey Keep. He's going to hopefully stick around a little bit. Yeah, he'll sit down on the recliner with me. Black cats are a big part of this story, Damon, so you're gonna help out a lot with this. So today we're focusing on the legendary city of Kadath in the far, far east in George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, and we are going to be relating that back to its original story, the Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath by H.P. Lovecraft. No secret that George R. R. Martin includes a lot of Lovecraft Easter eggs in his story. Places like Ib, Lang, Carcosa, Kadath, a lot of Lovecraftian elements. And when crafting the map, he just straight up plucked names and places and put them in there. Now, some things are changed. Some things are a little different. He makes them into his own. For example, the plateau of Lang in Lovecraft is more of an icy desert plain. In fact, throughout Lovecraft stories, it exists in three different forms. Here, it exists as an icy plain in the Dreamlands where Kadath is. At the Mountains of Madness, Lang is a icy plateau in Antarctica. In the Hound, it's actually more of a desert in an area more akin to the Stan countries like Kazakhstan and whatnot. But the names stay the same, and a lot of things that George does can be traced back to these original stories. In fact, in my notes, I have the quote, because what we're doing here, just like we do with the Mosby stream, is we're taking something that has about 2 sentences written about it, and we're going to somehow turn that into like a 2+ hour stream, because that's what I do on this channel. That's what I do on the show. I'm a huge fan of the far east. Very interested in what George is doing there. Have a lot of ideas of what he's trying to get across. I do believe that is very much an homage to the Dreamlands. The fact that everything, as we get further far east, the weirder things get, until finally we get past the 5 forts where it's just straight up like, okay, does this really exist? How real is this, and how made up? Because this sounds made up, yet it's possibly real. And in that sense, it seems like an homage to the Dreamlands, because in H.P. Lovecraft story, the Dreamlands, it's left up for interpretation whether the Dreamlands exist on an astral plane or if they're an alternate dimension with physical parallels. And it seems to be both. It varies from story to story. Continuity in Lovecraft is not really a thing. I've said that before in other streams, especially like the Tales of Hastur Euron stream. When you're looking at Lovecraft and his mythos, the Cthulhu mythos, and the other stories, after Lovecraft's death, when you have all of these new writers coming in, from Derleth to James Blish to Lynn Carter to Brian Lumley and the Titus Crow stories, there's been so many writers, so many different fingers in that pie. It's hard to keep track. And then Lovecraft himself didn't really have much continuity from one story to another. I've already explained that, how Lang changes 3 different times from 3 different stories into something different. But the quote that we have for Kadath in A Song of Ice and Fire, and this comes from The World of Ice and Fire: "Of the lands that lie beyond the 5 forts, we know even less. Legends and lies and traveler tales are all that ever reach us of these far places. We hear of cities where the men soar like eagles on leathered wings, of towns made of bone, of a race of bloodless men who dwell between the deep valley called the Dry Deep and the mountains. Whisper reach us of the gray waste and its cannibal sands, and of the shrikes who live there, half-human creatures with green-scaled skin and venomous bites. Are these truly lizard men, or more likely men clad in the skin of lizards? Or are they no more than fables, the grumpkins and snarks of the eastern deserts? and even the Shrikes supposedly live in terror of Kadath in the Grey Waste, a city said to be older than time, where unspeakable rites are performed to stake the hunger of mad gods. Does such a city truly exist? If so, what is its nature? On such matters, even Lomas Longstrider is silent. Perhaps the priests of Yi know, but if so, these are not truths they care to share with us. And that's really all we get on George's version of Kadath, but just from that little bit, if just like relating back to the Mosby stream, if we take the little bit of information that we are given, but then we relate it back to the original source material that George was inspired by, in this case, the story, The Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath by H.P. Lovecraft, we can kind of see the elements that he's playing with and how he sort of changes things a little bit to his own nature to make it his own, but still keeps some things the same. Kadath, we also get a little bit more information of Kadath in the mobile app of Ice and Fire, where it is said that the city is as old as time. That is the first city that it will stand immemorable, and that this is what the inhabitants of Kadath claim. Now, for me, the word inhabitants of Kadath has always struck out to me. It's not the people of Kadath, not the men of Kadath, not these other, not those types of terms. And words are very important in George's story. So for it to be the inhabitants of Kadath, sort of gives like this otherworldly feel to what's really living out there. And we've already talked about how it borders the lands of the Shrikes, which may be screaming lizard creatures, or it might be just men in lizard skins. It borders the Cannibal Sands. It borders the Grey Waste. Actually, it's like probably seems to be the only city proper in the Grey Waste until we open back up into the further parts of the Shadowlands, far north of the Mountains of the Morn, and that's when we start to see like this. That's where the city of the Winged Men and Carcosa lie on the Hidden Sea. Please go back and if you care to, check out my other streams on Carcosa and beyond. I go a lot into Carcosa and the Hidden Sea. Also check out my streams with David Lightbringer, Beyond the Five Forts, where we talked about like cities of the Winged Men and what possibly could go on there. And Kadath in Lovecraft's story lays in the cold waste in the northern continent of the Dreamlands, beyond Inganok and the northern men, beyond the plateau of Leng, this icy sheet desert plain really plateau that goes on seemingly forever, that all men fear, that even the men of Leng, the horned men of Leng, fear. And George, in his version, like now it's not the plateau of Leng, but it does say that Kadath in A Song of Ice and Fire exists on a plateau in the Grey Waste. So the Grey Waste definitely seems to be allegorical to the Cold Waste. As for the story itself, Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath, this is it's the longest story of Lovecraft's dream cycle. It's the longest story to feature his reoccurring character, Randolph Carter. It's his second longest story written by him. It beats the Mountains of Madness by about a 2,000 word count. It was a novella that he had started in 1926, finished in January 1927, but was not published in his lifetime. It did not get published till after his death in 1940. He died in 1937. The story is not published until 1943 by Arkham House, which is created by August Derleth, one of Lovecraft's contemporaries, and a man who sort of kind of took the reins of the Cthulhu mythos and took things into his own direction. Now, I've talked before on other streams about my misgivings with Derleth, but I do appreciate everything he did with Arkham and getting these stories out. Lovecraft himself did not care for the story. Like he He didn't think it was that good, which is one of the reasons why he never really sought to have it published. And when it comes to Lovecraft fans, there is a bit of mixed feelings about the story. Some find it to be too fantastical, some too much of a fantasy, too whimsy. And because it never really went through editing, it never went through drafting, it reads very much like a first draft. It's like the story is just a burst stream of consciousness of every idea that Lovecraft seemed to have. And with references back to older stories and characters and people and places and things. And it really is a launch. Like, I would love to read it out loud, but when I was prepping for this stream, I was listening to it on audiobook, and even the audiobook, it is just over 4 hours long. And I don't want to take this past 3 hours. And that's from professionals who read this correctly and are probably doing the correct pronunciations. It's another thing I'm going to say right here when it comes to Lovecraft and these names, when we're talking things like Dilothleen and Nyarlathotep, and pronunciations are Yog-Shoggoth, Azathoth. Like, pronunciations are going to vary from person to person. I try my best to get these pronunciations correct, but sometimes I have to look up pronunciations, and then Google will say, like, what the fuck are you even, what are you talking about? What are you typing? That ain't a word. It's a trip sometimes with Lovecraft's naming conventions. So anyway, so that's a bit of background about A Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna summarize the story, since I'm not gonna read the whole thing proper because that's just way too long. We're gonna do a summarized. We're gonna summarize it, start from the beginning, cover the key points, and kind of play with look at what the story has and the elements that George kind of drew off of there and relate them back to A Song of Ice and Fire. Again, this whole thing is, I do believe that what George is doing with the far east, especially with all the places past the Five Forts, is like his own version of the Dreamlands. It's an ode, it's an homage, that's where I believe he is coming from. Now, I could be wrong. This is just my thoughts, my theory. You know, George could have really liked the names and just decided to throw them on the map, but for that there to be that many Easter eggs is deliberate, especially too when you're throwing in Carcosa, which is not even an original Lovecraft idea, but comes from Lovecraft's own contemporaries. Because just as George is drawing from the writers that he loved as a kid, the writers that he grew up with, so too did Lovecraft. Lovecraft seems to have gone through 3 distinct phases in his writing. There's the early years, his raw, some people call it his raw phase. This is when we get like stories like The Rats in the Walls and Dreams in the Witch House. And these are very much more of like a reminiscent of Poe type stories. Then when we get to the later 1920s with a story like The Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath, this is Lovecraft very much working from Lord Dunsany, another writer that he loved. It's fantasy and it's whimsy, and it doesn't read. It's not like the Cthulhu mythos that's going to come later. It's not going to be this what we now would consider Lovecraftian horror. Though eldritch abominations are definitely a thing in the Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath, it's more of it reads more like Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz type story. The true dread would come later. So this is definitely Lovecraft and his big Dunsany kick. And then there are the later years, the 1930s. Up to his death, where Lovecraft, I believe, really comes into his own. And this is when we get like the true eldritch, like where it becomes like true eldritch abominations. Everything has tentacles like that. The Lovecraft that we tend to think of first are the later years Lovecraft. This is mid Lovecraft, and this is him still coming into his own. The Dream Quest is his real first attempt at writing a novel. It is a novella. One of the reasons that it's like I said, it's longer than At the Mountains of Madness, and At the Mountains of Madness was actually rejected for publication during at like Weird Tales and the pulp magazines Lovecraft was doing because of how long it is. And this is even longer than At the Mountains of Madness. The only longer story is The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. That is Lovecraft's novel, which has an over 50,000 word count. So this is, like I said, this is really grown up. Oh, I thought I was being clever, Sir Pounds. The Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath is going to go down as one of my favorite titles for a stream that I did. Just as the thumbnail that I did for my Aegon 3 stream with Austin Flowers is going with Aegon up watching the circus bear with Homer Simpson is going to go down as my favorite thumbnail probably for any video I ever do. But anyway, back to the story. So, Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath starts with Randolph Carter. Randolph Carter is a recurring character in the Dream Cycle stories. He's kind of an author stand-in for Lovecraft. He's like, you put yourself in the story. He really is like Lovecraft's own avatar. He's not a dynamic hero. He has like the same paranoias as Lovecraft. But where his power lies is in his dreams. He is a dreamer, and he is very accomplished at lucid dreaming. And the story goes is that he dreams of this fantastic city. And I have a lot of artwork that I want to share. So let's start with this. So share screen. And share. Okay, so this is the Fabled City of Kadath by Lone Animator. This is the picture I used for the stream thumbnail. And so 3 times he dreams of this marvelous marbled city with silver fountains. And he wants to go there, but after the 3rd time dreaming, he stops having these dreams. He can never reach it. So what he does is he begs to the earth gods who dwell in the Dreamlands to allow him to visit the city, and instead they stop allowing him to dream of it at all. So then he decides, okay, I'm going to go see the gods in person. I'm going to request this. I really want to see the city. Nothing is going to deter me. So he resolves to go to Kadath, where the god lives, where the gods live, to beseech them in person. But no one has ever been to the Kadath, and no one knows how to get there. So in Dream, Randolph Carter descends the steps, and he speaks with 2 priests, Nosh and Kamen Tha, whose temple is the Cavern of Flame, and which borders the Dreamlands. What's interesting to me is this Cavern of Flame. When we think of Kadath and A Song of Ice and Fire, it lays just beyond the 5 forts, nestled between past the 5 forts and the Bleeding Sea. It's like the only city, one of the city proper, that seems to be like it's on the wrong side of the wall, so to speak. It's on the wrong side of the 5 forts. Now, when we think of the wall, and the wall is an ice wall, the 5 forts being the wall of Essos, since George loves his use of parallels, and the 5 forts being made of fused black stone, which in which implies dragon fire, that these were built by dragon lords during the time of the Great Empire of the Dawn. So, in a sense, that makes them a firewall. And I insert NordVPN ad here. That's always going to be the joke whenever I call the 5 forts the firewall. But to get to Kadath in the far, far east in George's story means having to pass through the 5 forts, this firewall. And for Randolph Carter to get to Kadath in the Dreamlands, he must first go through the Cavern of Flame. So it seems like the Cavern of Flame seems almost allegorical to the 5 forts in this sense. And he speaks with these 2 priests, Nosht and Common Thaw. I'm sorry, I'm looking at, if it seems like I'm looking away, it's because I'm looking at my notes. Nosht and Common Thaw. And the priests warn Carter of the great danger of his quest. They tell him, like, look, man, if the gods have stopped letting you see the city in your dreams, then there's probably a good reason. And if you try to go, you're probably going to die, or you're going to lose your sanity. But Randolph Carter decides, no, I need to see this wonderful marble city of my dreams. I need to go to Kadath. I need to speak with the gods, and I need to gain entry to this. So Carter leaves the Cavern of Flame, and he enters the Enchanted Wood. I do believe... Nah, I thought I did not get... do not have a picture of the Enchanted Wood, but I do have a picture of the Zoogs. So we will bring up that. Stop screen, share. One day I'm going to get good. I'm going to learn how to do this right. So he comes across the Zoogs, and the Zoogs are the mortal enemy of cats. They feed on kittens. Oh, crap. Well, anyway, that was the Zoogs. The Zoogs, they feed on kittens and then let me bring it back up because I guess I didn't get to credit the artist. So Zoogs. Sure. I have so many tabs open. So this is Furtive Zoog by Felicia Cano. And the Zoogs are the mortal enemy of cats. They eat kittens, and then in turn, they are eaten by adult cats. And Carter, he asked the Zoogs, for somehow he's able to communicate with them, if they know where Kadath is. They don't know, but instead they suggest that Carter go to the town of Ulthar and find the priest Atal, who is learned in the way of the gods. These are all references to other Lovecraft stories. Atal appears in and Ulthar appear in the story The Cats of Ulthar. Lovecraft being very much a fan of cats. And again, there's going to be multiple references throughout the stories. I think we'll do the summary, and then we'll come back and look and go back to the references. So the Zoogs tell Carter, go to Ulthar, speak with Atal. Maybe he knows what's going on with this. Okay. So Carter goes to Atal. He goes to Ulthar. He finds Atal, And Atal mentions a huge carving on the mountain of Ingranok on its hidden side that shows the features of the gods. Carter realizes if he can get to Ingranok and look at the carving for himself, then maybe he can find a place where mortal people share those same features. It's said that some of the gods would take on the visage of a human, come down to Earth, have one night stands with human women, and leave behind little half-god children. It's very, very much like, very Greek gods. If we're talking about in a sense of a Song of Ice and Fire, we can kind of think of like dragon seeds and how the Valyrians were sort of viewed as gods on Earth. But there's going to be people that sort of have these more godly features. And so he decides, okay, I need to go to Mount Ingranok and find this stone sculpture, and then I need to try and find people that look like that. And again, I'll bring up the artwork for that one. Okay, so that is Mount Ingranok. And this is by Leoncio Harmer. And Lovecraft is only able to, not Lovecraft. Randolph Carter is able to get this little tidbit of information from Atal by basically getting him drunk. Like when he first speaks with Atal is trying to tell him the same things that the priests are telling him. Like, you don't want to do this. This is not a quest you should be going on. You really should just turn back, wake up, do whatever, just give it up. But Carter's undeterred. He gets him drunk. Atal tells him this little bit. So Carter's like, okay, I'm going to try and get to Ingranok. I'm going to look at this mountain. I'm going to find people, try and find people that have these features. So he puts Atal to bed. He tenderly tucks Atal into bed. And from there, he leaves to Dailoth Leen. And from Dailoth Leen, he's trying to secure a boat to the island of Oriab, which is where Mount Ingranok is. And Dailoth Leen it's like a bustling trade town. But there's always this air of like this ominous air around it. And that is because of the black galleys that frequent its harbors. The galleys are steered by oarsmen who are never seen, and they're crewed by these men in turbans, and they trade these rubies for slaves and gold. And the slaves come from the land of Parg, cross the river from Dailoth Leen. And most of these slaves are black, and this is Lovecraft's rampant racism and xenophobia is something that has been talked about ad nauseum. And the last thing the world needs is another straight white man giving their interpretation on it. I will just say there, like, yes, Lovecraft was very racist. And I, as a white man, as a Lovecraft fan with a black cat, I'm very aware of the optics. So I'm just not going to, like, you want to focus on that, go to someone more who's more in a better standing, in a better position to talk about that. I'm not going to. We're just going to talk about the story. Like, Lovecraft's personal, faults aside, we're going to focus on this story. And these slaves are basically being taken. They're going to be used as meat because these turban men, it turns out, are actually the men of Leng. These are not humans. These are horned goat men, horned demon goat men. They're very akin to both the horned men and the green men that we think of in A Song of Ice and Fire. Just bring up again more artwork First, we will show Diloth, the city of Dilothlene. Where is it? There we go. Okay, so this is Dilothlene. This is by Frey Engle. I'm probably going to butcher these names. I'm going to go back in after the stream in the video info, and I'm going to have all of the artists' names listed because I'm probably not pronouncing a lot of their names correctly. But you can see like it's if we take this picture of Dilothlene and the black galleys and all of that, and we compare it to a picture of Asshai by the Shadow. This is the picture of Asshai that we get in the World of Ice and Fire by René Aigner. You can see like it's very, very, very reminiscent. You can kind of tell like where the inspiration for some of this came from. And if you're not familiar with Lovecraft, if you're more familiar with George's story, then Asshai is a good place to think of when trying to picture Dilothlene, especially when the Black Galleys show up. And I'm just going to close some of the tabs that we already looked at because I have too many open. Okay. Oh yes, thank you. Yes, Go Team, big villain, evil mentor program. This is one of the T-shirts of the week. Back when Venture Brothers was still on, I was lucky enough to grab this one while it was available. It's I don't wear it very often. It's probably one of my most pristine T-shirts. Just because of how little I wear it, but I was like, I think I want to wear the good ones for when I do these streams are rare. These are fun times. Let's wear our good stuff instead of the crappy tattered shirts we wear on any normal day that I'm just sleeping in. So back to the story. So Carter goes to Dilothlene. And while he's there, his quest is interrupted and he is captured by the Turban Men. They take him on the Black Galleys and they start rowing and they row off the water and they fly to the moon. Fly me to the moon, let me see among the stars. We're going to get copyright claimed if I sing anymore. So he goes... and let's, again, more artwork. We're just going to show the... I don't know why it's... I wish it would list these in alphabetical order the way I have them opened. I said, one day, I will get good at this, and I will be able to bring the artwork up that I wanna share on command. Anyway, okay, here we go. So these are the Turban Men. This is by Kurate Satyapit. I am going to definitely butcher this name because I believe this is a Hindu name. Kurate Satyapishit. I'm just going to have to list the names later, but it's fucking cool looking. Anyway. So that's the Turban Men when they are in disguise in Dilothlene, which is not a very good disguise. This is like Zim trying to disguise himself as a human. Like, are you sure this is the disguise you want to go with? But because what they really look like, what they really look like as when they take the turbans off. The turbans are actually covering up their horns because they are the horned men of Lang. And this is the Horn Men of the Men of Lang by Mark Ferrari. And this again is another concept that George Tate, the idea of the Horn Men is something that goes back in mythology for centuries. And George takes this, incorporates it into a Song of Ice and Fire. I would highly suggest watching some of David Lightbringer's video about the Green Men and about the Men of Lang on his channel. So these are the inhabitants of the plateau of Lang, where Carter's trying to get, because that is where Kadath lies. And these are why no real humans will go there, because you got these guys living there. And so the Men of Lang take Carter to the moon, where it turns out that the Men of Lang are slaves themselves. They are slaves to the moon beasts. We'll bring them up. These are the moon beasts. They're these like toad-like creatures with tentacles, because this is Lovecraft and everything has to have tentacles. And again, I'm just closing some tabs to try and clean this up a bit, just so that we're not so cluttered, because I have too many tabs open with all the artwork that I want to share. So this is this is Moon Beast by Loic Muzi. I've used his art. He does a lot of great Lovecraft artwork. This is not the first time I've used his artwork. Believe also when we get later on, the Shantak that I'll be showing is also by him, and that appears in the Carcosa and Beyond stream that I did, and the Tales of Euron Tales of Hastur Talk of Euron stream. I shared a lot of artwork that Muzi did. So Carter goes to the moon, and he finds that there is a procession of moon beasts and their slaves being driven out. These slaves are the men of Parg. The slaves are going to be forced to work on the mines in the moon, mining for these rubies that the turban men will trade in Dialoth Lean. And then there's the fat ones that are they're food. They're going to be food. And they are going to deliver Carter to the crawling chaos Nyarlathotep. But Carter is saved at the last moment by the cats of Ulthar, who fly to the moon and slay his captors, and they return Carter to the port of Dialoth Lean. And it always tickles me pink when I picture this, because Carter also makes mention of a little black kitten, like pirate, and I always picture like this little black kitten in a pirate hat who leads the cats of Ulthar to his rescue. And again, I have a black kitten. I have Damon. Damon is currently sleeping. Oh, are you awake? Would you like to give your perspective on this? No, he just did a big kitty yawn. I wanted you on screen for this part, Damon. You're supposed to be the cat of Ulthar. That's just, I'm talking to my cat Damon, who's not participating at the moment right now. And so he's taken back to Dial. So, and this is going to become a recurring thing throughout the story. Carter is captured and saved and kidnapped and saved and kidnapped and saved. But this time it's by the cats of Ulthar, and they return him to Dialoth Lean. But And this is all before the Moon Beast can deliver Carter to Nyarlathotep, who, again, we got some artwork of him. Nyarlathotep. Yes, that is the Crawling Chaos Nyarlathotep. This artwork is by Site. These artists all have such difficult names. Saidi Balzain. Again, I'm just gonna have to list the artists and their names in the video info later because I cannot pronounce them. Their names are harder than pronouncing the Nyarlathotep. But that's the Crawling Chaos. All right, stop screens. Come back to me. Okay. So Carter returns to Dialothlene, and he finally gets his ship, and he's going to sail to the island Oriab. On the way to Oriab, he travels across. He gets to Oriab, and he travels across the island riding a zebra. This sticks out again because when we think of the further east, there's the Jogos Nai who ride Zorses, and Zorses, seemingly being a crossbreed of zebras and horses being ridden by, of course, the Dothraki, and the Dothraki seem to have been the Dothraki. There's legends say that they originally came from beyond the Bone Mountains, so it seems like the Dothraki that we know in the Great Grass Sea on the western side of the Bones may have originally been from a nomadic group like the Jogos Nai who crossed the Bone Mountains and discovered horses. And it implies, in the existence of Zorses past the Bones, implies both the existence of horses and zebras in the far, far east. So Carter's riding a zebra across the island of Oriab, trying to find Mount Ingranach, so that he can see the visage of the gods and then try to find people who resemble this. But on the way, he hears all these people are talking like dark whispers about the night gaunts, but they're never properly described. He finally makes it to Ingranach, and he makes the climb. He discovers the gigantic carving of the gods. And he is surprised to see that the features that he sees, it matches those of sailors who trade at the port of Cellophase. Cellophase is this is a reference to Cellophase, which is another Lovecraft story. It's one that I actually read aloud in our Carcosa and Beyond stream. I also have trying this again. We're gonna share some screens, and we're gonna share in some artwork of. Where is Cellophase? There we go. This is by Mary Counts the Walls. This is the city of Cellophase. And Cellophase no, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. Okay, so he realizes that the features of the gods look like the sailors who trade at Cellophase, and so he decides, okay, I'm going to go visit Cellophase. But before he can act on this, he's kidnapped again. This is the second time he's kidnapped. This time he's snatched away by night gaunts, and the night gaunts transport him to the underworld, and he is left to die in the Vale of Noth, which is in the underworld. And so we will bring up the night gaunts. Okay. So this is Dream-Quest Night Gaunts by Edo Saith Webb. And the night gaunts are like, they're like these leather, these creatures. They have no face. They have blubbery skin. Like it's like, well, not blubbery is the wrong word. It feels like whale skin. That's what it's supposed to give the impression of. And they have like these giant bat wings, and everyone's afraid. Like people are afraid of them. The gods of Earth, gods of the Dreamlands are afraid of them. Like everyone's fucking afraid of the night gaunts. Even the Shantax, which are going to come later, which are almost the Shantak are supposed to be birds, but they're more dragonic in nature. Even they're afraid of the night gaunts because the night gaunts fucking eat Shantax. And so he's kidnapped by these things, and they fly him to the underworld, and they leave him on the this veil, and they just leave him there to die. But luckily for Carter, he is rescued again. Just as he is kidnapped for a second time, he is rescued for a second time, and this time he is rescued by ghouls. And this is Dream-Quest Ghouls. This is also by Edo Saithweb. And among the ghouls, one of them is a person that Carter knows in life, and that is Richard Pickman. Richard Pickman is a protagonist of another Lovecraft stories, Pickman's Model. Pickman's Model, Pickman is an artist, and he paints these monstrous just these absolute monstrous paintings. And turns out like the monsters he's painting are real. That's just a quick story, a quick summary of Pickman's Model. But here, Richard Pickman exists in the Dreamlands as a ghoul, which implies that he must have died at some point. But he agrees to return Carter to the Upper Dreamlands. And from there, Ghoul Pickman and this tribe of ghouls, they lead him to the city of the Gugs. And the Gugs are just another bit of nightmare fuel. Stop screen, share. Okay, this is by Joseph Diaz, and these are the Gugs. The Gugs are these giant, furry, cannibalistic creatures. They have jaws in there these jaws full of razor sharp fangs, and they open vertically. But luckily for the Carter and the ghouls, they're asleep. So they decide, okay, we're going to sneak past the Gugs. And while they're going past the snoring Gugs, in comes a pack of ghasts, which we also got that to share. The ghasts. Where are my ghasts? There we go. This is by Jacob Basilic, and these are the ghasts. And the ghasts tend to be, they're like a humanoid creature, and the Gugs eat them individually, but then in turn, the ghasts, when they're in packs, will then try and hunt the Gugs. So as Carter and the ghouls are trying to sneak past the sleeping Gugs, a pack of ghasts show up, wake the Gugs up, and we get this skirmish of the ghasts and the Gugs, the fight of the peaks and the follicles. Lovecraft died in 1937. Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats was not published until 1939, but given how Lovecraft was such a fanboy for other writers and his love of cats, I could totally see him gushing over T.S. Eliot's work. Lovecraft would have totally been a Cats fan. He would have probably tried to, just in the way that Lovecraft exchange letters with other writers. He'd probably also be someone who would also try and like exchange letters with T.S. Eliot, talk about their love of cats and anti-Semitism. It's a thing. It's a thing for both the writers. It's the 30s. It's neither here nor there. Oh, the gas attack the Gugs, and there's this skirmish, and while they're distracted, the ghouls lead Carter to a trap door. They open up the trap door, and it leads back to the Enchanted Forest. And once again, Carter comes across the Zoogs. So we'll bring that picture. No, we're not going to. I already showed the Zoogs. So we're going to close some of these tabs again. Try and... Okay. Make this a little less cluttered. Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, the Lovecraft monsters on parade. I brought up... in retrospect, this probably was too much artwork to share in one go. I gotta learn how to. I gotta get better at sharing these artworks, so it's not constantly me stopping to try and find the right picture. I need to label these better. One day I'll learn. So he goes back up into the Enchanted Wood. He comes across the Zoogs again, and he finds that they are planning to make war on the Cats of Ulthar. Carter loves the Cats of Ulthar, so he warns the cats, and they launch a surprise attack on the Zoogs. And then they have their own skirmish, just as the Gas and the Gugs have a skirmish. There's a skirmish of the Cats of Ulthar and the Zoogs, which then ends with the Zoogs and the Cats of Ulthar settling on like a treaty of sorts. It's weird. It's a very weird story. Again, like it never. I said at the beginning, it never went through drafting. It never went through an editing process. This is really Lovecraft just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. It's a total burst of consciousness, but it's lucid dreaming, and this is like every little fantastical thing he could think of, all thrown into one story, and that's why it's kind of it's kind of. Among Lovecraft fans, it's a bit divisive. Now, I'm going to come out straight and admit that Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath, it's not my favorite story. It's definitely by far not my favorite Lovecraft story. But if it had gone through revisions and an editing process, if it wasn't just a first draft thrown out to the world long after the man had died, it probably would, it could have been a better story. But it's still, though, this is Lovecraft practicing the art of longer storytelling. This is his first attempt at a novella. And it references back to a lot of great stories and a lot of from his early works, but it's gonna set up a lot of great stories that are coming in the future, especially Nyarlathotep, who's going to be probably the most recurring character as far as the elder gods and the eldritch abominations that Lovecraft is known for is going to go. Nyarlathotep he's the crawling chaos because he can be anything and he can be anywhere and he can shapeshift. He's such a versatile character. It makes sense that Lovecraft is going to come back to him. Just in the way that Cthulhu, maybe not as versatile as Nyarlathotep, but it's such a big thing that there's so many ways to work with it. There's a reason why these characters have endured, why they're so famous, why they're what Lovecraft's remembered for, and why they still keep coming back up even in new stories today. The Cthulhu mythos is a living text. There are still writers contributing to it. Same with Nyarlathotep and as the messenger of Azathoth, as the crawling chaos. He permeates in so many different stories, and then also video games and RPGs and comics. There's so much that Nyarlathotep has is it just sprouts up in little different ways. There's even I forget who wrote the essay. I think it might have been poor Quentin, who compares Euron Greyjoy to Nyarlathotep. Now, me, I'm more personally geared towards Euron as more of a Hastur type. Again, my Tales of Hastur Talk of Euron stream, I laid that all out. Euron's Hastur parallels, his King in Yellow parallels. But there's definitely some elements of Nyarlathotep in there. I'll just have to find the essay and link that. But I'm pretty sure poor Quentin wrote it. Anyway, but we're going to go back to the story. So after the skirmish between the Zoogs and the Cats, Carter reaches the city of Thrawn, and he buys passage to Celeface. And while he's there, he asks the sailors who are taking him there if he believes that the men who trade there, if they are kin to the gods. And he learns that these particular sailors that he's thinking of who trade in Celeface, these are not the people of Celeface. They're just people who trade in Celeface. They are actually from the land of Inganok. Inganok is this cold, dark land. Very few people dare to travel. Carter finds it more ominous because there are no cats there, and the fact that if it's a place where there are no cats, then that's something that's going to make Carter's spidey senses tingle. Like, oh well, this must be a really fucked up place if there's no cats there. Like, I don't see no good in if there are no cats. It's like just like in real life, if someone says they don't like dogs, well, something's wrong with that person. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the dog. If you don't like dogs, you are not to be trusted. That's just my personal belief. I love dogs and cats. I got Damon and I got 2 dogs. And one day, if I will put away my very expensive choking hazards and maybe the dogs will be on the stream, Brody and Chloe can come down. So while he is in Celeface, Carter meets his old friend Karanis. And Karanis is another old dreamer. And he has dreamed up the entire city of Celeface. Like, the whole city of Celeface is a creation of Karanis. Again, if you go into the Carcosa and Beyond stream, Celeface is one of the short stories that I read, and you can hear more about Karanis there. So he is king of the city, but over the years, he has grown bored with his fantastic Crystal City, and he longs for his old home of Cornwall. So Karanis is now a permanent resident of the Dreamland, but he dreams up a new part of the kingdom that resembles Cornwall. Karanis, being a permanent resident now of the Dreamland, having spent so much time in the Dreamlands, has even more knowledge of how the Dreamlands work, even more than an experienced, accomplished dreamer like Carter. And just like everyone else, from Atal to the priests, he tells Carter, don't do it. Don't go to Kadath. Stop. Turn around. But Carter's still not going to be deterred. So Carter decides, no, I'm going to go to Inganok. I'm going to go to the Cold Waste. Now, Inganok is famous for its black onyx, which is what they trade in Celeface. And the entire city is constructed of this onyx. Now, again, this whole black stone, the greasy black stone that shows up so many times in A Song of Ice and Fire, from Asshai to the Toads to the statue on Toad Island to the Sea Stone chair. This is a very, this is a lot attributed to Lovecraft. It's not Lovecraft's original idea. It appears in stories before that, because again, Lovecraft also built on his own contemporaries from the stories of his own childhood. But it is it's so reoccurring that it's become just a foundational piece of Lovecraft stories that even though it's not his original idea, it's still so much attributed to him. So Ingenok, just like Dialoth Lean, we can kind of think of Asshai when trying to picture it. And it lays in this place called the Cold Waste, which again is allegorical to the Gray Waste. And Carter decides, okay, I'm going to come up with this cover story, right? I'm going to go to Ingenok with the intention of working in the Onyx quarries. That's how I'm going to gain passage there. And on the ship, so he leaves Celeface, gets on another boat heading to Ingenok to this quarry. It's a trip that takes 3 weeks, and as they get closer, Carter spots a granite island. He asks the sailors again, these sailors again that he's traveling with, about this granite island. The captain explains to him it's a nameless rock. Best not to speak of it. And that night, while Carter's trying to sleep, he hears strange howls coming from the island. 3 weeks pass. Carter arrives at Ingenok. He buys a yak and he starts heading north, hoping that when he gets to the quarries and goes past the quarries, that maybe he'll find Kadath. He makes his way up a steep ridge. At the summit, he looks out. He gets a breathtaking, just like this absolute astounding view of this gargantuan quarry. And then he sets off towards it, but the yak gets spooked and runs away. As he's chasing after the yak, he is kidnapped for a third time. And this time he is captured by a character known as the Slant-Eyed Man, which is a character that fucking kidnapped for a third time. Kidnapped by the Slant-Eyed Man. Again, just there's no real way to just get past Lovecraft's just blatant racism at times, that this is the descriptor that we have to be given to this character. But the Slant-Eyed Man leads him to a monastery in a domed room with a circular wall. And Carter starts thinking that these are the vaults of Zin in the underworld. But really what the Slant-Eyed Man takes him to this priest, the high priest who should not be described, who wears a silken robe and a yellow mask. And this is Lovecraft borrowing from Ambrose Bierce and more importantly from Robert W. Chambers. This is the high priest not to be described. This is very much the King in Yellow. This art is by Decepticoin. This is the high priest not to be described, playing his ivory flute. It is very world as he Lovecraft encouraged other writers to add to his worlds as he did theirs, an early prototype to the world building in the vein of Philip Hose. Yeah. That's what I'm getting. That's one thing I'm getting at. Is like Lovecraft encouraged other writers to build on his world, and Lovecraft informing his own world built on his own contemporaries, Bierce, Chambers, Lord Dunsany. It's very much just in the way that so many writers today pay homage to Lovecraft. Lovecraft in his time was paying homage to the writers that he loved and the ones that inspired him. And here again, with the high priest not to be described, with the yellow robes and the yellow silken mask, it's very much Chambers, Robert W. Chambers, The King in Yellow, which is another one of Lovecraft's like favorite works when he was going at this. And so And Carter begins to suspect, okay, like this man and these priests, these are conspirators. They're trying to thwart my quest. They're trying to keep me They're trying to keep me from reaching Kadath. Like, he starts to have these thoughts that maybe, like, just as in how the gods of the dream world, the earth gods, the other gods, they've stopped allowing him to have these dreams of this fantastic city, that now they're throwing obstacles in his way. And it's here, this is where Carter learns that the men of Lang are the same people that conceal their horns under the turbans in Dialoth Lean. And he learns that the Night Gaunts do not serve Nyarlathotep like he originally had thought, but they are actually in the service of another god, Nodens. And Nodens is this is one of the things that Lovecraft rips from real world mythology, because Nodens is a Celtic god. In fact, I also have artwork of, I have one for Nodens too. This is Nodens, Lord of the Great Abyss, by Angie Silveria. And he learns that the Night Gaunts serve Nodens, and that the Earth gods, the Dream gods, the other gods, whichever term you want to use to describe them, because all three are acceptable in this case, that even they fear the Night Gaunts. As for the High Priest, not to be described, we never see his face. It's never revealed who he truly is. But Carter, like, recoils from him in horror, but this distracts the Slant-Eyed Man. And while Slant-Eyed Man is distracted, Carter pushes him into a well, and then runs away from the High Priest, and he ends up in this, like, corridors, this maze. He wanders through pitch black darkness, fearing that he's being chased by the High Priest. And at last, he finally reaches outside, and he realizes that he is in the ruins of Sarkomand, which lays near the coast. And as he reaches the ruins of Sarkomand, he encounters the ghouls again, the ghouls that had helped him before. Turns out the men of Lang have taken them hostage now. So the men of Lang are carrying the ghouls to that nameless rock that he had heard howls coming from the night before. And it turns out that rock is an outpost for the moon beasts. It's an earth, like a station for them off the moon in the Dreamlands. So Carter summons the rest of the ghouls from the underworld, and they take control of this galley, where they sail to the rock and they fight a battle against the moon beasts. They win, and the ghouls ask Carter, like, okay, like, you know, what can we do to help you, because you saved us. And Carter, sticking to his original plan, you know, it's like, I want to get to Kadath. And the ghouls decide, okay. So this is like the first time we get characters who are not afraid to go to Kadath and are not trying to dissuade Carter from going to Kadath. They're like, sure, man, we'll help you. Not only will we help you get there, but we're gonna give you the Night Gaunts, and some of us are gonna stay behind. Like a small garrison's gonna stay behind just in case more moon beasts or more men of Lang show up. But the rest of us are going to be like your entourage, and we're going to fly with you to Kadath, and you can have the Night Gaunts. And from here, Carter basically, he goes on a flight with the Night Gaunts, and they fly over the plateau of Lang. And finally, they reach Kadath. And it's like a parade. Carter shows up with these night gaunts and this procession, this entourage of ghouls. And in turn, he is met with a great procession on the other side. And that is led by this pharaoh-like man. And this is actually an avatar of Nyarlathotep. So we will... So first, I just want to share the artwork for... So this is the plateau of Lang as it is... Yes, this is the plateau of Lang as it is described in this story. Again, Lang also appears in other Lovecraft stories, but it's not always the same. At the Mountains of Madness, it's still the same frozen wasteland plateau, but it's in Antarctica, not the Dreamlands. And in the Hound, it's more of a desert scape. And so that's that. And then he is greeted by this pharaoh, who's actually an avatar of Nyarlathotep. And for that, I have artwork. This is actually Nyarlathotep from Dreams of the Witch House. His avatar as the black man, the black pharaoh. But Nyarlathotep shows up in this pharaoh form, in this like human avatar, and he tells Carter that the gods have left the city because they have seen the city of Carter's dreams, and they've decided to make that their new home. So they've abandoned Kadath. And the pharaoh commands Carter to find this city so that the natural order might be restored. The line he gives him: "It is not known overseas, but back over well-known years that your quest must go, back to the bright, strange things of infancy and the quick sun-drenched glimpses of magic that old scenes brought to wide young eyes. For know you that your gold and marble city of wonder is only the sum of what you have seen and loved in youth. These things you saw, Randolph Carter, when your nurse first wheeled you out in the springtime, and they will be the last things you will ever see with eyes of memory and of love." He reveals that he is Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos, emissary of the other gods, messenger of Azathoth. And he sends Carter back to Inganok on a shantok bird. Or no, sorry. He sends him through, not back to Inganok. He sends him through space and time to the Sunset City on a shantok bird. And so we'll just bring up the picture of the shantok. Again, this is by Loic Muzi. These are the shantaks, and these things, despite what they look like, these things are actually preyed upon by night gaunts. Like, as far as the food chain goes in this place, you got Nyarlathotep, and the night gaunts are like way at the top, and then the shantaks are still a step below them. So Nyarlathotep flings Carter through space and time, and it's through while this is happening, Carter realizes that he's not being sent to this great city of his dreams. Instead, he is being taken to the court of Azathoth at the center of the universe. Azathoth is the blind idiot god, the demon sultan. We'll bring up him. I think we're getting to the end of the artwork that I want to share. So let's see. Let's share. Where are you? Azathoth. Yep. Okay, yeah. Azathoth, the blind idiot god who exists at the center of the universe. In Lovecraft, all of existence is but Azathoth's dream, and he is serviced by a procession of just demonic eldritch abominations who play pipes and flutes and drums to try. They're basically playing a lullaby to keep Azathoth asleep, because for Azathoth to awake would undo all of existence. Nyarlathotep is supposed to be Azathoth's messenger, but he's not he's not really one to take his job seriously. In fact, there's it's in another Lovecraft story where Nyarlathotep actually smacks Azathoth, and it's like, what are you fucking doing? And that's because that's Nyarlathotep is chaos. He's not. While most of the Lovecraftian gods are either they're hardly any are benevolent. Like Nodens is one of the few examples of a benevolent god, and even then, I said Nodens is taken from Celtic mythology. Most of the gods of Lovecraft's world are either they're either uncaring, they don't care about humanity, or they are just outright hostile to humanity. Nyarlathotep, he gets his jollies off on chaos. He's a trickster. He's like he's like a Loki. Nyarlathotep would rather fuck with people really than kill them, but at the same time, he has no qualms about waking Azathoth and undoing existence. And he would do it just for the funsies. He would do it just for the lulls. So that's Azathoth, and so Carter realizes that, okay, shit, this is Nyarlathotep tricked me. I'm not going to this Marble City. I'm going to the court of Azathoth, where I'm probably going to get ripped apart and eaten. But it is then that Carter realizes, wait a minute, I'm dreaming. This is all a dream. And he forces himself awake. First believing he is doomed, Carter suddenly remembers that he is in a dream, and he saves himself he leaps off the Shantok bird, and as he's falling, his thoughts turn towards New England, and he wakes up to find that he is in his home of Boston, because Lovecraft loved New England and hated anything that wasn't the New England states. Northeast white Anglo-Saxon Protestant supremacy. Look, I've been to Boston, all right? No offense to anyone from Boston who may be watching this or comes across this later, but you are not a great marble city. Definitely not a fucking city of dreams. Not Boston. Not Boston. Your roads are terrible. Cool things to see, great conventions. Fucking hate driving in Boston. But anyway, so it turns out he had been dreaming of Boston all along. But then you go back and realize, oh shit, the elder gods of abandoned Kadath for this great city of Carter's dreams, and it's Boston. So the implication we're left with at the end is that the elder gods, the other gods, are now running around in Boston, which I guess could explain a few things of why Boston is in the state that Boston is in. But that's in a nutshell. That's the Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath. Very whimsical tale, total burst stream of consciousness on Lovecraft's part. And the things that I want to pick up on from the story and relate them back to A Song of Ice and Fire is this idea of this city of Kadath, the city of gods, the city as old as time, that lays in the cold waste. And we factor that back to the Kadath that we know of, A Song of Ice and Fire. The city as old as time, the first city, the oldest city, the one city that lays in the gray waste past the five forts, where even the Shrikes fear to go. A city that we know nothing of the people, or even if they really are people, because they're referred to as the inhabitants. Not the people of Kadath, not the men of Kadath, the inhabitants of Kadath. A city where unspeakable rites are performed to slake the hunger of mad gods. Very Lovecraftian nature. It definitely seems like a domain of Nyarlathotep. Which I'm sure is are the things that when we think of these mad gods, this is probably what we're supposed to think of. We're supposed to think of Nyarlathotep. We're supposed to think of Azathoth. We're supposed to think of Shub-Niggurath, Yog-Sothoth, like all of the bigger Lovecraftian eldritch abominations, besides Cthulhu, because Cthulhu's big in the Iron Islands. And also Hastur, which I relate back to Carcosa, which is even further east here. For the Dream Quest, Lovecraft himself declared, the quote from him, "It isn't much good, but forms useful practice for later and more authentic attempts in the novel form," which is exactly what it was. This is Lovecraft attempting to write a longer form story, going past the short stories that he was more accustomed to, that were getting published in these pulp magazines, these weird tales, things of that. 1948, Arthur C. Clarke sent a copy of the Arkham Sampler that contained the Dream Quest and Dunsany. And again, remember, Dunsany was like Lovecraft's big hero. He responded, "I see Lovecraft borrowed my style, and I don't grudge it to him." And then there's the numerous references that are in this story that relate back to other Lovecraft works. We talked about the ghoul Richard Pickman first appears as Pickman's model. In that story, he's a human painting nightmare creatures. The priest Atal appears as a boy in the Cats of Ulthar and in the Other Gods being another one of these stories that I read in the Carcosa when I was doing live readings in the Carcosa and Beyond stream. Nyarlathotep, frequently mentioned throughout the Cthulhu mythos, but this is his only appearance where he has any sort of like real meaningful interaction with a Lovecraft character, or really like, and specifically a human character. Khurani's introduced in Cellophase, again, read that aloud in the Carcosa stream. Khurani's abandons his human life in favor of the Dreamlands, dreams up the entire city of Cellophase, becomes its king, but as the years wane on, he grows homesick for Cornwall and then dreams up a new section of the kingdom that resembles Cornwall. There's allusions to the travels of the lighthouse keeper from the White Ship, Plateau of Lang, like I said, Mountains of Madness and the Hound, but locations differ. Kadath is mentioned by name in the Necronomicon, in the Dunwich Horror. It's briefly mentioned in At the Mountains of Madness. So lots of the Cats of Ulthar, again, also from the proper story, the Cats of Ulthar. The little black pirate kitten, that's the kitten from the orphan boy Menace from that story, who is his companion who disappears after 3 days. And supposed to be my daemon if he was here. But yeah, so that's Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath. Very fun. It's a fun story. If you're really into Lovecraft, I would suggest reading it. But if you're not really into Lovecraft, maybe, you have to really be a fan to appreciate it. Again, like it is this divisive work among the Lovecraft community because of how much more of a fantasy story it tends to be rather than the Lovecraftian horror that we've come to know, the eldritch abominations, all of that, the fear and unknown and paranoia and the things of that nature. But you can see like where George is taking some of these elements from the story and incorporating them back and making Kadath his own. Now, as I said, Kadath lays on a plateau in the Grey Waste, but it's not Lang. Lang is an island. Same with other Lovecraftian things that George borrowed, like Ib and Sarnath, the doom that came to Sarnath. Ib is a gray stone city inhabited by these creatures that are more akin to that are a lot like the Squishers. And they are basically genocided by the people of Sarnath across the lake. In George's story, we have both Ib and Sarnath. Ib is a big island in the Shivering Sea. It's inhabited by these people that seem to be akin to the hairy men from from old legends and older Essos. They're kind of like they seem to the men of Ib seem to be like George's version on Tolkien's dwarves. In fact, I'll be talking a lot more about Ib next week on. Very excited to say July 17th. I will be guesting on History of Westeros. I'll be doing Valar Rereadus for Ib with them, and I'll be talking a lot more about like the doom that came to Sarnath and things of that, and Tolkien, also talking Tolkien and Tolkien's dwarves, and also talking about the men of Ib as kind of like a differing form of like what it's. For me, the men of Ib can be approached from three sections. There's the fantasy element, which is Tolkien's dwarves. There's the Lovecraftian element, where pulled from the doom that came to Sarnath for the name of the island. While the Squishers don't apply to Ib, but do apply to so many other places. Though they could apply to Ib, like it's in the Shivering Sea. And then there's the more historical, scientific element with these other forms of life. The men of Ib seem to be like, hey, what if Neanderthals never died out, but instead continued on and lived alongside Homo sapiens? And we get this alternate form of life with its own customs and culture and ways of doing things. I'm gonna go all that in next Sunday when I'm with Aziz and Ashaya and Dancing Sean for Valar Rereadus. Very happy to do that. And then Sarnath also appears in George's story. Sarnath of the Two Towers, one of the now ruined cities of the once great prosperous Sarnori kingdoms before they were destroyed by the Dothraki in the Century of Blood. So what George will do is he will take elements from Lovecraft, names, places, things, that kind of thing, and then he tweaks them just a bit to make them his own. But Kadath, since Kadath is so far east, it is never going to be on the page proper. It seems like this one has a little bit less tweaking and editing. Seems to be more reminiscent of what we would think from the original Kadath, a city as old as time, a city of mad gods, a city in the cold waste, which the Grey Waste, a city past the Cavern of Flames, that being the dragon fused Five Forts, the firewall of Essos, the parallel to the ice wall. And yeah, it's if you've when you can connect all heroes, you can even connect Sailor Moon to the meteor strike. Yeah, I think if you can find there's ways to argue anything. Like if you truly wanted to, you could probably connect one thing to another. But what I'm trying to pick up on is these just these elements, these broad strokes. Like they're definitely there. There's definitely things that George built on from Lovecraft, but that Lovecraft then built on from other writers of his own time. And it just shows like the nature of like enduring stories. Like a good story will endure the trials of time, and new writers will find ways to pick up and to take those elements and craft them into whole new stories. And I said, like, the thing that I really think that George is doing with the far, far east, especially out past the Five Forts, with the land of the Shrikes, with the cities of the Bloodless Men, with Carcosa, with Kadath being there, it really seems like this is an homage to the Dreamlands, because it is like, it sounds too fantastic to be real, and yet it is. There's something out there. We just don't know what it is. And that's because where are we getting the information? Well, in George's world, it's coming from the maesters. But we've seen the farther away from Westeros you get, the more obscure the information, the more we're relying on travelers' tales and lies, like that quote from the beginning of the video. And when you think of like the maesters writing about Asshai when they've never been to Asshai, I've used the example of this is like think of like a 14th century monk living in some little hamlet in Germany, never left Germany, probably never even left his hometown, probably never left the monastery he's living in. Yet this is the guy who's going to tell us about Vietnam. And that's just not my example. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but George kind of said that too when asked in an interview of why there are no children in Asshai. And it's the same thing here, is because they say like is maybe, who knows, like maybe the priests of the scholars of Yi know. They're closer. They're the ones that are actually bordering the Five Forts. They're the ones. Yi is the land where the Five Forts still serve a purpose, just like the Wall. While the Wall has fallen out of commission, it's fallen from like the great noble thing that being a man of the Night's Watch has used to be, to becoming more of a penal colony for Westerosi criminals. But it's still very important to the North, because it is the thing it is the last line of defense, keeping the North separated from the wildlings. In the same way, for Yi, the Five Forts, that's their last line of defense from whatever is out in the Grey Waste, from the raiders of the Grey Waste, which definitely sound like Eastern wildlings, from Carcosa, where the Sorcerer Lord, which is very much a King in Yellow parallel, is coming from. If he were to ever trying to really push his claim as the Yellow Emperor of Yi, it's the Five Forts that are going to be the first line of defense against whatever he can raise. It's the first line of defense against Kadath. If Kadath were to ever to decide, you know what, we are the first city, the oldest city. We are the successor state, not Yi, because Yi, being the successor state to the great empire of the Dawn, and Yi tries to fashion themselves as like, no, we are the oldest and most ancient and the first and the foremost civilization, and the one that will endure forever. And this happens in other places too, like Sithorios, for example. The further south we know of Sithorios is the Green Hell, as far as the Maesters know. But it's implied that the people of the Summer Islands, they probably know what's south of there. They probably have charted Sithorios, the southern tip of it, because they are accomplished map makers, but they closely guard those secrets. The men of Ib, and this is something I will go into more in Valar Rereadus when I'm on with History of Westeros. The reason that the 1,000 Islands, we know that it's not actually 1,000 islands, it's actually more about 300. And that's because of Ibonese map makers and Ibonese charters. just and in the sense that they know that the 1,000 islands are actually only about 300 islands, the Ibbenese probably know what's out past Mossavi. They probably know what's out in the Shivering Sea. If there's ice dragons living in the Shivering Sea, they're probably the ones that know. But we don't know anything because we know nothing about Ib, because nobody's allowed past the port of Ibn. Same thing here with Kadath. Like, nobody, we're never going to meet a character from Kadath. But with these shows that are coming out, the successor shows, House of the Dragon, the Corlys Valerian show, 1,000 Ships for Nymeria, and then there's the animated YT show. And I've said in other streams, like, when it comes to the successor shows that are coming out, I'm excited for all of them, but I think even more than like Corlys and House of the Dragon, it's the YT show that I want to see, because this is where we might actually be able to see these things. It's through the ET show that we could maybe, I'm hoping with all hopes, that maybe we will see the Five Forts, that maybe we will see the Great Waste, maybe we will see Kadath and Carcosa and the Sorcerer Lord. If you're a true detective fan, then you would know King in Yellow. There's an audience for that. So Sorcerer Lord and Carcosa claiming to be a Yellow Emperor, that's going to get people talking. It got me talking. It's what got me doing streams and doing like the picking up on the Euron Greyjoy parallels and all the Ironborn lore and things like that. The Far East is so, for even though we know absolutely nothing about it, it just captures the imagination so much. And the more you look into it, and the more you look into George R.R. Martin's inspirations, when you go to Lovecraft and Bierce and Chambers, and then you go further than that and you look at Lovecraft's contemporaries and Lord Dunsany and everyone else, and again, and all these other writers, and then you go into the expanded mythos, writers like James Blish, like Ramsey Campbell, like Brian Lumley does the Titus Crow stories, and then Lynn Carter. Lynn Carter contributes heavily to the Cthulhu mythos and to the Carcosa mythos. Again, the Carcosa and Beyond stream, another one of the live readings I did was Lynn Carter's Tatters of the King. Lynn Carter knew George of Life. They were friends. Now, Lynn Carter passed away before A Song of Ice and Fire was written, but he was an editor for he was one of George's editors for his early stories in the 70s and the 80s. So this is a man who, had a relationship with people who had real living friendships with people that have expanded the mythos. And just as and like that, George is laying these little Easter eggs and these homages. And for a Lovecraft fan like me, and for someone who's read Chambers and Bierce, and I haven't actually, I want to read some of Lord Dunsany. I actually haven't gotten onto his thing. He seems to be more of a fantasy writer. So haven't gotten on that. It's on the never ending to read list. Another one I want to get into more is Conan, because there's so much Conan in A Song of Ice and Fire. Again, when we're talking about the Saranori kingdoms, the Cimmerians, and things like that. That's something in the next week I'm going to be boning up on, along with trying to get more Tolkien knowledge. I'm not the biggest Tolkien fan, but my fiance she's a huge Tolkien fan. I asked her the other day, like, tell me about dwarves. I need to know more about dwarves so I can prep for this History of Westeros stream. But yeah, so that's Kadath. Unlike Mossavi and Carcosa, which I've been able to like really kind of build more mountains out of, mountains of madness, Kadath seems to be, while interesting, seems to be more of this is only lightly tweaked. The little bit of information that we get seems to be more like a dream quest of unknown of the story that its namesake was taken from. Just take the Dreamlands story of Kadath, but make it into a real city on Planetos. The truth is that if we were to ever see it, it's just like if we were to ever see Asshai. I think the truth, whatever truth there is to Kadath in George's world, it's never going to be as fantastic as what the maesters make it out to be, because it can't be. It can't. For it to actually exist on Planetos as another city means that to get there means that there really must be more of a down-to-earth thing to it. The things we're going to read from the maesters are going to be always more fantastical than what's really out there. But that's not to say that there's not magic out there, because there's definitely magic in the story. And if we get the ET show, we could get Kadath, we could get Carcosa, we could get the Five Forts, and we could find the state that they're in. I often think that the Five Forts may be in a state of disrepair the same way as the Wall is. Maybe the Five Forts are no longer as grand as they once were. Maybe they're Essos' penal colony for criminals. Maybe, who knows? Maybe not all Five Forts. Just in the way that the Wall had 19 castles, but only 3 function. Who's to say that the Five Forts are all garrisoned? Maybe 1 or 2 have been abandoned, and only 3 out of the 5 are actually staffed. And they're probably not. And they, again, me thinking on this, like, they're probably not staffed by 10,000 men. It's probably a much smaller group of people that's taking care of this. Because right now, what we're given from the Five Forts is that they exist to protect Yi from raiders out of the Grey Waste. It just sounds too much like what the current Wall is doing with the wildlings. Like, we're just fighting off raiders. We're just fighting off people trying to get past the border. And the current situation of Yi with the 3 emperors, there's the God Emperor of Yi, who rules from his palace in the capital of Yin, but he has 2 claimants against him. There's Palko, who is the general, the hammer of the Jogos Nai, who has declared himself the first Orange Emperor and has set up his own capital in Trader Town. And then there is this sorcerer lord claiming to be from the Yellow dynasty of Yellow Emperors. Again, it's very much the king in yellow. And if I were to try and guess, the situation at the Five Forts is probably like the situation at the Wall during the War of the Five Kings, which is numerous emperors, just like there were numerous kings, all vying for the throne of Yi, just as they vied for the Iron Throne of Westeros, along with this whole cabal of high-ranking lords and nobles and aristocracy, and probably, again, and with Yi being an Imperial China parallel, probably like, merchant kings, because sometimes you got merchants who were, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Yeah, so definitely that warring Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the warlord era of China. Before the unification, before any of that. It seems like very reminiscent of all of that. And it's like, there always seems to be like these, something that's in Westeros is going to have this like sort of the same version of it going on in Essos. Same with like the Children of the Forest and the Ifa Kevron. One of the things that greatly inspired me looking at these parallels that George does is actually Joe Magician's video on Brienne of Tarth and Pretty Maris, about how Maris seems to be like Brienne on a bad day, and Kago Corpse Killer is like Sandor Clegane on a bad day. Like, there's parallels of people, places, and things of Westeros and Essos. And that's where I look at the Five Forts and the 3 Emperors situation. And what's really happening is probably just in how you have these numerous claimants and these nobles and aristocrats all fighting against each other, and they're too busy bickering amongst themselves to know that the real danger is the White Walkers coming from the north, coming out of the lands of always winter. And the wildlings, the free folk, are victims of that. And these are just people trying to get past the wall, get over the border to safety. I would say that the situation is probably the same in Essos. These raiders out of the Grey Waste are probably like Grey Waste wildlings, probably trying to get past the Five Forks, because there's probably some scary shit coming out from the far, far east, far out in the Grey Waste. If not White Walker, because from the story of the Long Night, how it seems to have happened on both Westeros and Essos, there seems to be the implication that maybe White Walkers existed in Essos. And even if they didn't, even if White Walkers are a purely Westerosi thing, there's still the legends of the demons of the Lions of the Night. And when you are past the Five Forts and you are in this area where you have the land of the Shrikes, the cities of the bloodless men, the cities of the wingmen, Mossavi, and where shape changers and demon hunters live, the Thousand Islands, which is like fucking squisher paradise. It's not hard to believe that something scary is out there, and that the regular people, unfortunate enough to live on the wrong side of the forts, just as the free folk are unfortunate enough to live on the wrong side of the wall, want to get past it and get away from the scary shit. And then ET is also dealing with a grayscale outbreak. Let's not forget that one. So for Kadath to be there, Kadath could be a major power player in this Far East thing, especially if this YT show goes, because they would be the otherized enemy, that the way the free folk are, only they're in an established city. It's almost like, hey, what if Hardhome was never destroyed? What if Hardhome continued on throughout the centuries and the free folk actually were able to build it up more and more? Would you have a bustling city beyond the wall? Maybe. Who knows? The closest we get with that right now is White Tree and Molestown, but Molestown's technically still Westeros. There's also Nefer, which we could see not just in the ET show, but also in the Corlys Velaryon show. That's one of the places that Corlys goes to. He sails to Asshai, he sails to Nefer, he sails to the Thousand Island, he sees the green-skinned fish people, and it's like, okay, I've seen enough. We're going, well, mostly it's his crew. It's like, yo, no, we're not going further. Like, fuck. When the people start fucking the fish, that's where I draw the line. I really want to see the green skinned fish people on the Corlys show. I hope we get it. I want House of the Dragon to be a success so that we can get to that, so that we can get all of these spin-off shows. But yeah, YT animated show is the one that I'm very, very excited for. And I think that's about it. Like, I think that's covered everything I want to say. Kadath, feel like I repeated myself way too much, and I'm not going to drag this one out into a 2+ hour stream. Thank you for everyone that came out. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. I hope you enjoyed the parallels. I hope you enjoyed my summary of the Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath. Hope you maybe learned something, enjoyed the artwork. I'll see you again July 17th when I'm talking Ib on Valar Rereadus with History of Westeros. That should be a lot more polished, since they, unlike me, who's kind of winging it with these streams, they know what they're doing. I also have more stuff for the future. I have another appearance coming up with Gray Area. I'm going to be recording another Obsidian Nights with her. I also have an upcoming appearance back with David Lightbringer. think we're going to be doing the Aegon 3 Regency. I think I got to figure that one out. So yeah, a lot planned. I also want to do my own Sandok the Shadow character study. I have a theory about Sandok I call Shadow in a White Cloak. It's a theory about Sandok possibly being named to Aegon III's Kingsguard, and it goes in with these parallels that we see with these young boy kings and the giant man protector, especially with Aegon's. I talked a bit about that on the Aegon 3 stream that I did with Austin Flowers. So check that out. Aegon 3 is one of my favorite. As far as Targaryen kings go, I'm actually going to say that Aegon 3 is probably my favorite. He's the most interesting to me as the post-war, post-Civil War, post-dragon, post-traumatic stress disorder king. How he fucking kept it together without dragons is beyond me, but he did. Maybe the fish were consenting. Yeah, from what we read from the Thousand Islands, maybe the fish were consenting, but it doesn't seem like the people are. Maybe I'll do a Thousand Island stream, and we can It's a shorter story. Maybe we can do a reading of Shadow of Innsmouth, and more tales of fish fucking there. Okay. But yes, thank you everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you later. Hope you like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at The Gray Waste, for more more streams to come. Definitely more appearances to come. And yeah, have a good night.